Little remains of the Parandoria from the time before they vanished beyond our reach and understanding. One of these remnants is an old outpost, serving as a midway station between the colonial port of Arlon and the now shrouded White Gate. I would say it is at an uncomfortable distance from one, and unnervingly close to the other. 70 years ago, Imperial officers would have stood where I stood now, looking out this very window at ships coming and going, backlit by brilliant white light from the 2 stars of the White Gate Nebula. A beautiful, inviting sight, as records described it, reminding people of the glory of the benevolent Parandoria of light. A beacon for their journey through the dark. Blatant propaganda, if you ask me. However, now, it is all dark, seemingly covered by a vast, abominable mass of shimmering clouds darker than space itself. Caused by God knows what. No ships can approach it, and none are coming through. Even though it's light years away beyond the reinforced glass, my spine shivers looking at the thing. I have been aboard this station for more than 5 years now as overseer and head of research. Many young students with inquisitive minds used to come here to help uncover the mysteries of the Parandoria's old devices, to study and one day enjoy their benefits. But as we were unable to produce results, interest and enthusiasm faded, along with the funding. After a decade or so, I was the sole researcher here, less out of commitment to the cause and more as an escape from home. Though work here was never convenient, it was calm and slow, and more importantly, quiet. On the 23rd of October, I woke up to the repeated pulsating roar of the Imperial Navy's distinct general emergency signal. I hurried to the comm center to check what was going on. Though it was an old station, it was by no means a dead relic. Most of the passive sensors were operational, short-range comms as well. What my research was focused on was how they were working. We were still mere guests without any actual control over the more advanced systems and weapons. And the further goal would of course be to get our hands on their legendary navigational tech. But that was a mere dream at this point. A dream that turned into a nightmare soon after. Comm panels that were silent for decades now all lit up, indicating so many things at once, even I could barely make sense of it at first. Through the various errors and warning lights, it finally became perfectly clear. We have something incoming. There was no need to check the heading. I knew exactly where it was coming from. Though it terrified me, I quickly ran to the observation deck and opened the shutters to once again gaze into that dark abyss. It appeared as if the nebula had started to dissipate, finally letting some of the starlight through. However, it was no starlight that came. As it moved ever closer, I made out a couple of flickering lights on a huge, elongated silhouette. The blood froze in my veins. A darkened warship. Though I have seen depictions and pictograms of Imperial vessels before, not one of this size was ever mentioned. The closer this ghost ship drifted towards the station, the more I began to realize its immensity. It was many times the size of the entire facility. I was certain that the thing was going to crush the station, and me, and my life's work, would be blown away into the vacuum of space. But then, the massive shadow slowed down its drift and began to ease into a turn. As it turned and got in range of the station's spotlights, the shadows creeped back from its side to reveal strange, gigantic scorch marks all along its hull. I know of no weaponry that can cause such damage. It was just like the scars seen on sperm whales or on the mega whales of Europa when they delved too deep. As we've learned in the latter case, there are worse things than mere giant squids in the oceans. Could such horrors lurk in the void as well? I could not believe what I was thinking. Such utter nonsense. Nothing lives in space. They must have some sort of beam weapon systems like the ones we currently struggle to develop. My stumped musings were cut short by the all-too-familiar voice of the station. Docking sequence initiated. This time it was no food supplies, nor the courier with letters from home. I'm not sure what I expected or what terrified me so. The Parandorians, though I considered them somewhat self-righteous, were no pirates or Scavian marauders. On the other hand, there were stories floating around this part of space. Stories I would on any day dismiss as mere superstitious tales of drunk scrappers. But at this moment, they all crawled up from the back of my mind, whispering, "What if?" After all, it did come from there. But I was a scientist at heart. While fear grasped at my throat still, excitement started to boil in my stomach. The opportunity to see a vessel of the Parandorian Navy, let alone one of such magnitude, was incredible. The knowledge there would finally give meaning to my work. No more a useless chore. This is the chance. I'll be an academic hero of the Union. With this thought, I mustered some courage, threw my caution aside, and before I knew it, I was in an EVA suit, through the airlock, and in the belly of the giant. I consider this to be my last sane memory, for what I have found there broke my mind. After walking around the hallways for a while, the first thing I remember is getting lost, but not minding it. It was all in pristine condition, you see. The shiny, bright white panels with the black linings and details with chrome finish mesmerized me. Pleasant bluish light framed the anti-slip floor segments, and also some of the wall-mounted consoles, all freshly polished, neat and clean. I had trouble accessing most of them, though. Similar security panels on the station took me a year and a half to unlock. I do have tools to circumvent some, but they need certain access ports, which I would most likely find in the command center. Without any access to operate the elevator consoles either, I admitted defeat and took the stairs. I met the first crew member on Deck 9. A young blonde girl casually leaning against a bulkhead, holding a datapad and being terribly absorbed by it. She was wearing the standard uniform of what they call the comm guard. I froze solid, and must have stood there for minutes in shock, as if I had seen a ghost. She either didn't notice me or chose not to. Knowing their odd customs, I decided to walk past and not bother her. While I was extremely interested in their technology, the people and their ways I've always found arrogant. It may be part of my soul heritage, how they ended the war and left. I was certain that's what they had done again, you know? Moved on, vanishing in a sea of doubts, leaving us nothing but an ink-black cloud, more questions, and a couple of confused and crumbling colonies. Following a long hike through some maintenance ways that were left open, I was out of breath by the time I arrived in the upper midsection. My gear was slowing me down, but despite seeing more and more of the crew, I followed Union protocol to avoid any chance of contamination. I did not forget where this ship came from. The staff was walking about, seemingly cheerful. Some talking, some minding their business, carrying equipment, interacting with consoles. Their constantly upbeat mood was always alien to me, so I failed to notice that something was far more off. For example, I couldn't understand the words they said to each other. I knew multiple of the Parandorian dialects along with most of their nomenclature and abbreviations. However, what they were speaking didn't feel like language. The meanings just appeared in my brain. It may have been some advanced translation system which somehow eluded my research. It felt utterly strange nonetheless. It is when I finally reached the bridge that I had to accept something was definitely wrong, and was thankful to have kept my suit on. All this time, nobody had reacted to my presence. I could understand being ignored all this way, but here? I stumbled around the command stations, touching buttons, flicking switches, and turning knobs. No effect. I tried grabbing one of the officers, but it made no difference. Was I part of some kind of elaborate projection or hallucination? None of them even flinched. In my growing frustration, I barely noticed that my movement had become somewhat sluggish. None of it made any sense. But it did not matter. I was there on the bridge of an Imperial Navy warship. There was knowledge to be gathered, so I decided to get to work. It's not like the apparitions would mind. I walked up to one of the command consoles and produced a data leech from my belt's pouch to plug it into the access port. I had to reach through an officer sitting at the station. He remained still. His form, or projection, didn't even shimmer. However, I did feel that slight sluggishness again. My motions were slow and imprecise. With my trusty algorithm, I managed to get some of the ship's logs, layout, and other files. Only then did I remember to check my oxygen readout. In my haste, I must have taken the wrong gear and come with a half-used tank. I was just about to leave and head back for a fresh O2 tank before exploring their mysterious navigation system, when a faint noise caught my ear. After amplifying the suit's external receivers, I could distinguish a faint whimper. A crying girl or child. It came from where their navigation computer should be. To my surprise, the door was open. Could there be someone I can actually interact with? As I was walking towards it, I felt more and more clumsy with each step. I tried my best to make it to the source of the quiet but consistent sound. As I reached the chamber, a rush of vertigo washed over me. I stumbled and fell in. The most foul stench assaulted my nostrils and shook me to consciousness. Opening my eyes, I saw a kaleidoscope of strange colors. That and the smell told me my visor was broken. The air seemed to be breathable, but it was so unwholesome. I thought I'd rather have no air at all. When trying to get up, I could barely manage. I was stuck to some awful material spreading across the floor. I struggled to take off my now useless helmet. Slowly squinting through a splitting headache, I saw no sign of the pristine white panels and bright interior. Instead, the walls were corroded metal with strange, dark red vines and growths covering everything. Did they encounter some strange flora or fungi that infected their vessel? Scanning around my drastically changed surroundings, my eyes finally fell upon the workstations, where the crew used to be. Now I saw disfigured, torn bodies, strands made of human flesh and guts, blooming out and spreading into a network of vines connecting all of the consoles. Hanging from the ceiling, they seemed to be organized into thick cables leading to here. It was the point everything fell into place, yet also apart, because signals from another of my senses that I was ignoring until then finally reached my brain. The crying, that subtle whimper never ceased. It was there all along, right behind me. I felt trapped and outplayed, lured and caught in the web of some cosmic predator I never believed existed. It was not curiosity nor courage that forced me to turn around. It was the hope that whatever I found there would consume me and cease this horror once and for all. It did not. I turned around and looked upon her. And I saw the ultimate truth. We are but pieces, frightened and mangled, life stretched thin, fractured, the face of the universe shattered.